He's getting collected and then I'll make a copy.
Just real quick before the district begins, we'll have to keep the sidebar conversations on just a little bit. We do have in-seating microphones.
Come on through, John.
This is going to be recorded, so it's available for later. And just so you know that it may not appear or sound like it right now, but these microphones are awfully sensitive. You'll hear some paper crinkling, so unless you want to be have every side conversation heard in the public recording, I'm just letting you know that it does pick up quite a few whispers as well. So again, thank you. I'm Doug Reed, the Emergency Management Director for the county, and they needed a little bit more space to host this meeting, so we offered up ours to use. I'm glad you're here, so you can all see our Emergency Operations Center. This is where we would kind of huddle decision makers in public safety when we have major events going on. Thank you for coming out, and with that, if you didn't see, right out here in the foyer is where the restrooms are at. If you need anything, weather looks good today. If for some reason there's some type of an emergency with the building, there's exits right here in the back, but also behind this door. And that's really all I've got to do with this. Just wanted to welcome everybody and say good morning. And
You didn't bring cookies.
no, I didn't bring cookies. I didn't bring cookies. We had estimates of anywhere between 50 and 500 people, so I rolled the dice and thought, yeah, I'm not going to win either way. So thank you for being here, and hope you enjoy your time.
Good morning. My name is Jim Hudson. Can everybody hear me? No.
Is there a microphone for
It's
him?
as loud as I can talk, but I could use a mic, I guess. Is this an SM58?
Sure.
It is a sure. I like SM58s. Now can you hear me?
No.
Now can you hear me? What am I doing? Talking. Hello? Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, just the right amount of reverberation. Is it distorted? That sounds pretty good right there, doesn't it? I'll start over. My name is Jim Hudson, drainage attorney. I'm from Pottawattamie, and I've done work in a bunch of different districts in Pottawattamie County, up and down the river. And I'm representing Pigeon Creek and any other districts that are involved in this today. I think it's only Pigeon Creek. Show of hands, I kind of wanted to know if there are people here in the room that have been involved in drainage hearings before. I don't see very many hands. This is the annexation hearing scheduled now. After the annexation, if we get to it and have time, they will do the reclassification hearing. So, just so you know, in both public hearings, you're welcome to attend and observe, no problem. Some of your objections, I've started to read through those, relate to reclassification. I won't do those objections until we get to the reclassification hearing. I like to read through all of the objections in public, so everybody gets to hear what is being said. Unless they're repetition, I won't read all of them. And if you are a landowner and you want to read your own objection, you certainly may do so. I would suggest you come up here and get this microphone if you're going to read your own objection. Anyway, I just want to give you a little brief analysis of drainage law that applies to annexation. Drainage started to be put into our Iowa code in 1906. From 1906 until 1957, there was no way to annex additional land into a drainage district. So every time it became apparent that the district wasn't large enough, then they would reestablish the district, which was kind of cumbersome. In 1957, there was a study done with some attorneys and engineers and supervisors, people involved in drainage, and they proposed changes to the legislature, and at that point in time, annexation became into existence, which has been a useful tool. Annexation occurs in a number of instances whenever there is land that is discovered which is outside the assessment district, or the drainage district in this instance, and the board sees that and is told that. Usually that's done by an engineer, and that land gets a material benefit. The engineer recommends annexation to the board. The board makes a motion to, they call it a resolution, it's just a motion, to explore annexation and report back to the board. All of that procedure has been done leading up to the day's hearing. The engineer is Bolton and Mink. The lead engineer is John Rosengren. He's here today. He will explain his report in the near future. I will be quiet because what John has to say is more important for you landowners to hear, to understand why you're being annexed, and he will go through that in good detail. The annexation too, so you don't get confused between annexation and classification. Annexation merely determines by the board that your land to be annexed has received or will receive a material benefit from district facilities. What material benefit means is not defined in the Iowa Drainage Code. The Iowa Drainage Code is Chapter 468 of the Iowa Code. If some of you go online and explore things, you can look at Chapter 468. It's 641 sections long, and I don't recommend you start to cherry pick things on your computer. It's what I explain is like a walk in a pea patch. You'll be able to get into the pea patch, but it won't take you long before you'll get lost in the pea patch and won't be able to get out. I'm not discouraging you, but just be very careful how you read the drainage code. It used to be 14 or 15 different scattered code sections before it was all put together in about 1990. And so now it's in one area, but it doesn't flow very well from 1 to 641. It jumps all around. It's difficult read. Go your best if you want to try to do that. I hear a lot of confusing questions as I attend these hearings from people that have tried to work in the drainage code. So I'm here to answer any questions you have today. What I started to say is, once the engineer determines that there is a material benefit, what a material benefit is in drainage language and how it's used in drainage is that it's a real benefit, not a perceived benefit. It's actual, not imaginary. It really does exist, the benefit. It isn't just a made-up thing. It has to be. That's the threshold, and that's the standard that is used to annex. When we annex, we're doing so on what's called an involuntary basis by holding a hearing. And at the end of the hearing, the trustees will make a decision whether to annex or not to annex every parcel. And individual parcels may be left out of the annexation. The engineer may learn some things today that he's not heard before, so the board could continue this hearing to a later date. If the board continues the hearing, then there won't be new notices mailed or published, but you'll need to write the date down and come to the hearing then. Your objections will still be valid until there's a final decision made. If you've turned in an objection today, a written objection, I will eventually read all of those and answer questions, and the objection is fluid. What I mean by that is you may add to or subtract from your objection at any time until the board makes a final decision. If they don't make a final decision today and they continue the annexation hearing to a later date, you can amend your objection. You can amend your objection today. You can add to it or subtract from it. Drainage is designed and has been used for over 100 years to encourage drainage, not to impede or impair drainage. It doesn't always seem that way, but it's generally considered to be fair and representative of the landowners in the district. You landowners are the most important people in the district because the trustees, by what's indicated by their name, they act as trustees or the beneficiaries of the trust. The trust in this instance is Pigeon Creek Drainage District. The trustees you're aware of, and you landowners are the beneficiaries of the trust. There's a reason that the landowners don't make the decisions. I would dare to say, as I look across the room, that we couldn't get this room to agree on anything. A few things maybe. Everybody would agree that the sun is out today. But beyond that, we probably couldn't get much further to come to a complete agreement. So it's up to the trustees, according to the drainage law, to make the decision. I tell these fellows that's why they make such big money doing this. Your trustees are elected. I won't go into any detail, but they have periodic elections, and if anybody's interested, you can run for trustee. These fellows have been doing it for a while. They may welcome some new people being involved. So anyway, I won't go down that path very far. I want to turn it over to John Rosengren with Bolton and Mink for him to review his annexation report. John, have I covered what I normally do?
Yeah, I think you did a good job.
I'll be around still. I'm not going anywhere, so we can ask questions during or after John's presentation, and then when I review these objections, I'll go through any questions you have as well.
I assume I'm going to need this. Can everybody hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now?
No.
I couldn't hear anything, so.
That's the problem, this blower is very loud, so we have trouble hearing the vent as well.
What about now? Is it any better?
It doesn't sound like it's on.
Nothing.
It's not on.
Is Doug around?
Did I talk all that time and nobody heard?
You're a lawyer, it doesn't matter.
You're right, I have a theory I will tell you. 99.9% of lawyers give the rest of us a bad name. They heard that?
We can hear it now, John.
You're fine, John.
Keep talking.
Try that? Okay. Well, I will try to talk loud, and I'll try to use the microphone as best I can. Does anybody know how to move and advance the slides?
Right arrow.
Right arrow? Is there somewhere I have to point to? Get the pointer. Sorry, going in front of everybody.
Oh, you're fine.
No, she just zoomed in. You're on the other screen.
It wasn't just.
Just touch the bottom one more.
Up here? There we go. All right, the green dot didn't seem to work on there, so I'm gonna be pointing with my fingers too. So, good morning. I'm John Rosengren with Bolton & Mink. I'm the engineer for this project. I'm going to start with the annexation, as Jim said. Not everybody, many people have received this packet, which says Notice of Hearing of Annexation, Pigeon Creek Drainage District Number 2. That's what we're going to go over first. We're going to talk about benefits and land.
Still can't hear you.
I'll do my best. I can yell into the mic, but that's all I've got.
Just hold it closer to your mouth, John.
Okay. Always thought not to eat the microphone, but I guess that's what we're doing today. Okay. Everybody received this notice? So we're going to go through and explain what you're seeing on that notice to begin with. So you would have started with your landowner name, parcel ID, and legal description. The next column is benefited acres. That is the acres that we are recommending be brought into the district. Those acres, as far as annexation, are approximate. The reclassification will set those as the final acres for the schedule. The next column, this is probably the most important one for everybody to look at. This is what I call benefit category. So there are several different areas within the district. Each one was assigned a benefit description. That is included in your notice on the 6th page. Benefit area A describes lands that flow from the west side of the district into branch 1 or branch 1A. Those are out on the floodplain. If you have benefit area B, you're taking surface water or runoff from these lands, surface drain down the west road ditch of the Canadian Pacific Railroad to the branch 1 open ditch system. Limited subsurface drainage exists in this portion of the watershed. However, the ditch is available to serve as a subsurface outlet if landowners choose to avail themselves of that outlet. The levees and floodgates of the main open ditch protect that area from overflow caused by periodic Pigeon Creek flooding. If you have benefit area C, runoff from these lands, surface drain to the sub 1 open ditch, also out on the floodplain. Benefit area D, runoff from these lands, surface drain to the main open ditch, crescent lateral and Lapworth lateral ditch system. That should be an and or. Little subsurface drainage exists in this portion of the watershed. However, the ditches could serve as a subsurface outlet if landowners choose to avail themselves of that outlet. These lands sit higher than the protection provided by the Pigeon Creek ditch levees and do not benefit from the levees. This area generates roughly 45% of the runoff produced within the boundaries of DD2, and more than 90% of the silt deposited in the ditch originates from this area of DD2. Benefit area E, runoff from these lands surface drain to the main open ditch, crescent lateral and or Lapworth lateral. Limited subsurface drainage exists in this portion of the watershed. However, the ditch is available to serve as a subsurface outlet if landowners choose to avail themselves. The levees and floodgates of the main open ditch protect this area from overflow caused by Pigeon Creek. And finally, if you have benefit area F, runoff from these lands surface drain to the main open ditch near the outlet to Missouri River. Limited subsurface drainage exists in this portion of the watershed. However, the ditch is available to serve as a subsurface outlet if landowners choose to avail themselves of that outlet. The levees and floodgates in the main open ditch protect this area from overflow caused by Pigeon Creek. So that is that category. That is the one that is of most interest to everybody. If you're on this list, if you receive that annexation notice, it's because you fall into one of those categories and you are not currently in the district. You are benefiting in the ways described. You have an outlet for your surface water, and the district is dealing with the runoff and sediment and debris that is delivered from your property. That is the basis for much of the annexation. The next group of numbers there represent the minimum elevation found on your property from LiDAR. We also have the average elevation of your property, and all of that relative to the bottom of the open ditch, where your water flows into that ditch. So that is those next three columns. And finally, we have percent of outlet provided. This is the distance from your property to the Missouri River, which is the natural outlet for this area. Your water has to flow through natural creeks and Pigeon Creek out to the Missouri River. This relation is what percentage of that outlet distance is provided by Pigeon Creek facilities, whether that is Crescent Lateral, Lapworth Lateral, or the main open ditch. Those facilities have brought an outlet closer to you as the law describes, and that is what that last column was attempting to quantify. This map here is showing the lands that are recommended for annexation. You can compare that with what I just read off the report. Wrong page. So benefit area A lays over
have
here.
that map?
What? Say that
We have
again?
that map. I mean, we have maps, but we have the heads and tails of it, so is that,
We didn't get that map.
we didn't get this map?
Correct. That map is not in your packet.
Why wouldn't we have gotten that to see if we're in that area?
I agree. Or is there a way we can get that map? Is that what
Yes,
you're
there is. The issue gets to be there are 45 maps supporting all this information. To send that out to 750 people gets to be pretty expensive. We already spent $20,000 in notice alone, just getting you all here. So
Aren't you asking us to put the bill for it, though?
that's true. We can send those out there. But
They
yeah.
charge us for it whether we got it or not.
But, you know, I guess as landowners, we need to have that to see where we're at, because this means nothing to me.
Right.
I mean, I can't understand it.
Yeah, this has a legend on it, which like reading this, I could be like, oh, that's the annexation area. I didn't understand that when reading these maps here. There's something you can compare to.
Can we have somebody print that for us right now?
Yeah. Doug, can we print that off? Nope. Yeah.
I do have a question. So we're being annexed for these different ditches in the Pigeon Creek area. Where are they? Because there's not shown on the map where these approved areas.
So the question was, where are the ditches that we're looking to annex, or assess for? So we've got, the main open ditch is the ditch along the base of the hills out on the floodplain west of Crescent. Branches 1A and 1 lie here west of Pigeon Creek, and Crescent Lateral runs up to the west side of the city of Crescent. It stops short of the city of Crescent. And then we have the Lapworth Lateral that runs just south of Mormon Trail Road. I forget the name of that road there. What is it? Jocelyn. Jocelyn Avenue. Stops right at Jocelyn Avenue, west of Crescent. So benefit areas A and D would lie out here on the floodplain. Area C would be lands that drain to, sub 1 is not specifically a part of this drainage district. It is its own drainage district that lays out here on the floodplain along the along the Union Pacific Railroad. So that is a separate benefit area, separate drainage district, not part of this project. Benefit area D and E. D is primarily the hill land here east of Crescent. Mic to your mouth, please. Thank you. I'm sorry. And benefit area F would be the lowlands along the edge of that block. Area E and, area E would be the lowlands subject to flooding from those ditch creeks or ditch levees at the base of the hills. And then area F is the lowlands down here at the outlet of the creek along the Missouri River.
So how does area D benefit from anything?
So area D is the majority of the silt and debris that the district has to clean out, and they're assessing to help deal with that debris that is being dumped on others.
But it's illegal for us to stop our own water. So we just have to, what you're claiming is that the silt and debris is coming from everyone in the hills. And that's why you get to pay for it?
Yes, and essentially. Question?
Yeah, my land's draining into, it's the top of this whole thing, it's draining down into other people's ponds, and it's being held there. Is that taking consideration then? That none of my silt's getting into Pigeon Creek, I know, because that's several miles away anyway.
We did not take ponds directly into consideration. We did take into account land use throughout that area. So the majority of it was classified as timber, which has a very low erosion runoff factor. We did not consider ponds because it's hard to tell from the aerials what of that is permanent and what of that is natural ponding that just occurs and continues on. That is something that when we get to classification, we can talk about making adjustments for that. I think that'd be a reasonable thing to do, but up to this point, we have not made adjustment for that. Other questions?
Yeah, was terracing considered?
Terracing was considered. So in the calculation we did for erosion, it's a USDA process called the Universal Soil Loss Equation. In that equation, the effect of terracing is to flatten the slope of the hill, in essence. So it does reduce the erosion. It does not eliminate it, but it does reduce that. And we'll get into that more in the reclassification, but we did take those into account.
Where, in any of the papers we received, where is our classification for our land?
So right now, we are talking about annexation. This does not have reclassification in it. This is just, are you benefited or are you not? This one is a yes/no question. We will get into the how much in the next hearing. Yes?
My neighbor to the west, where supposedly our runoff ends up, has a dam that was built on that property over 30 years ago. So is that calculated in these?
Again, ponds and dams were not. That is something
Okay.
we can talk about in the reclass.
Thank you.
Yep.
Why wasn't that being considered? That stops flooding, it stops debris, it stops silt. Why would that be one of the main factors of this?
Because they're very hard to track on that scale. We've had several issues with, land use changes, things get built. It is much easier to figure out where the water's going when we talk to you than it is to just look at that and try to guess, is that actually a dam or is that just a collection of water in the photo?
Well, I have a portion out there that a dam was put in 30 years ago. The creek was 30 feet deep and farming it now.
Sure.
So why didn't that stop a lot of silt and debris?
It does stop a lot, and that's why
Well, that should be
we should talk about that. Yep, I agree. Yeah.
The bottom line is, how do we avoid annexation?
So, does your water go somewhere other than Pigeon Creek?
I don't know if my water gets to Pigeon Creek. I don't think it gets there ever.
And I would argue with that just based on the fact that water flows downhill. There will be a rain event at some point, which will send water down that hill.
But that water goes into the ground. I've lived there for 30-some years, and there's not that much runoff.
And that water still comes out. It gets to the bottom of the hill and it can't go any farther down. It has to come out somewhere. So it doesn't just magically disappear. It is going somewhere, and that is down the slope.
Still doesn't answer how do we avoid it. The annexation.
And why now?
Yeah.
Well, the why now is, this is really the first time that Pigeon Creek's been active since the ability to annex lands has even been an option in drainage law. So what did you say, Jim? That came about in 1957?
Yes.
Pigeon Creek was taken over by a trustee district in the early 50s, or as a trustee district in the early 50s. And they have not done haven't needed major repairs until 2011. So this project that we're looking at right now, what we're doing today, was kicked off for us as the engineer in 2017. We were hired to help clean up the assessment schedules for Pigeon Creek because they had a lot of debt from the river levee. That was 2011, most of the damage was on the river levee. They had to clear that debt, and they didn't want to assess it to people that had nothing to do with those river levees. The Union Pacific Railroad cuts off a large portion of that district. They don't receive flooding directly from the river because of that Union Pacific Railroad. So assessing repairs to the river levee to those lands is not appropriate. There's also a lot of lands to the north in Honey Creek that are protected by those river levees that should be brought in to help pay. So that was the 2018 work that we did, was to split off the river levees from everything else to make a fair schedule to assess those 2011 repairs against. 2019 happened right after we finished that process, which left us with, now we've got more damages to the river levee, which has its own schedule, but there's also quite a bit of damage done to this ditch system that had to be taken care of. There is FEMA money helping to offset a large portion of the cost, but it doesn't cover everything. But this is the first major work that the district has really done since probably the 50s. There's been no major repairs since the 50s at least.
So shouldn't the Army Corps of Engineers take the bill since they're the morons that made the fucking flood? Yeah.
I fully agree with that sentiment, and the likelihood of getting them to do that is not very high. Like I said, we are getting FEMA funds, so in a way we are kind of getting that relief, but I agree with that sentiment.
At this point, annexation is a foregone conclusion, and now we just discussed what category we fall into. Is that where we're at?
Well, one of, as Brian brought up, the levees, there is a levee that our property, there's drainage that goes down to in front of Holders and under the road and then into Costello's property, and there is a levee that in the 43 years we've lived there, we've never seen water. The only way it could get to Pigeon Creek is if it reached that levee. And so I totally disagree with you that you could, we could, if it went down our road, which is 185th Street, we could go into the ditch that goes, from my understanding, and I got something from the county engineer, it flows down into Indian Creek, not to Blackwood, not to Pigeon Creek. So please don't tell me the annexation is a done deal.
Are you kidding?
Yes, I am. You're almost right here.
Just for context for everybody else, looking at my bearings, down here in section 6. So she's along the ridge here down in section 6, and just for your understanding, I believe what you're saying with the levee, you're talking about a dam.
A dam, a levee, whichever, yes, sir.
Yep. What we found, because we actually went out and looked at that one, the water flows along the east side of the road ditch to a culvert and then flows west into one of the tributaries to, I'm sorry, I don't remember which lateral you're in. I believe that's Lapworth.
Lapworth is supposedly.
Yeah.
But the only way, if it had to go over that dam, is the only way it can get onto Old Lincoln Highway and into Lapworth. That's the only way. And in 19, it did not reach that. Nothing has ever breached that levee dam, nothing in 43 years. So that's
But I would be shocked to find that there is not some form of an outlet from that structure. There's almost always a pipe culvert or an emergency overflow location. The water is leaving that structure because the structure cannot hold an infinite amount of water.
Well, there's never been water to speak. Have you guys ever seen water to speak of in there? No.
That dam is 30 feet high, so there's never any standing water in it.
So if there's no standing water in it, then it is not staying in that dam.
Well, that's fine, but show me what water lands on my property and ends up in Pigeon Creek, 4 miles away. Between evaporation and the drought, I mean...
So a drought is weather, and that's weather related. It's not long-term climate. right? So yes, we're in a drought right now. I don't disagree, the last 4 years, yeah, probably haven't seen much water go down there. But that doesn't change the fact that in wet years, 1993, let's go with an example. If there was no water coming down there, then you guys have an amazing...
I just don't see how somebody that lives on the top of a hill benefits from this private drainage system, so.
What's the bigger issue? Is it something in of the drainage ways, or is it the runoff, the actual water doing the damage?
It's both. I mean, the repairs that we were making in 2019, FEMA denied one of the sites because it was already eroding because of the massive amount of water coming down. It's repairs that needed to be made because of the erosion caused by the land's tributary to the creek at that location. So it's both. I would say in Pigeon Creek, it tends to be more erosion than silt. Silt is real. They do have to clean that out from time to time. They get enough large flushing flows from the district to the north that the silt does get cleaned out to some degree. But it is both, to different extents and different time periods.
And then the other question I'm going to ask you is, how much does soil type and vegetation play into your factoring of this?
It's huge. It's both. When we get into it, we have a soil drainage class. How much does the soil actually need drainage, or does it have natural drainage? Those hills are going to show up as bright green because they have natural drainage. That less soil does not hold water. It seeps in and it flows subsurface underneath the ground. The flatlands, almost all of that needs drainage of some extent, whether it's surface ditches or tile. There's not a lot of tile out there, but it does have a greater need for drainage, and so that'll show up in those factors. The soil type also shows up in the soil use, I said that wrong, the universal soil loss equation, because every soil has a different tendency to erode. And I will admit, those less soils are going to be higher than some of the clay soils down on the bottom, because that less soil is not resistant to erosion at all. There's almost no structure to that soil. It'll erode with water on it at any moment. So it does come into effect in both directions when we get into the calculation.
Did the 2011 and 2019 floods creating stagnant water flow for them create additional issues?
I don't know that I would say create additional issue. What I'm saying, Frank?
I didn't hear the question.
Did 2019 or 2011 create a stagnant condition which made the conditions worse? I would say they didn't, because the water eventually broke at that south end. There was never really standing water. It was always moving. Most of the repairs that we made in 2019 were bank failures and erosion, more so than having to dip out silt. Yes.
Okay, you're talking about digging out the ditches, taking the grass away to control erosion, but yet when heavy rains come, you're going to cause more erosion because you're not covering the ditches with anything but solid dirt. So that's all going to wash more into Pigeon Creek.
I understand what your concern is. That is not the goal. We are not looking to do any major repairs. This is just dealing with the 2019 flood damages. In those damaged locations, we did reseed the bank to grass because we want that vegetation exactly like you're describing. So no, that is a valid concern. Along with that, any tree clearing is to keep the trees off, because trees are not compatible on a steep bank ditch like this. I know people want to say that trees hold the dirt, keep it from eroding. When you're in a steep condition like Pigeon Creek, which is built at a 45-degree angle, you shave the vegetation off of there and you make it more prone to erosion, and those tree roots are undermining that bank and causes more bank failures than, getting the natural creeks that are tributary to it. Yes, they work better because there's not that intense pressure from the soils trying to push down in. So in the case of a drainage dish like this, it's imperative we keep the trees off of it, because those trees will cause more damage than good. In the natural waterways upstream, it's not as big of a deal because there's not those steep banks that we have to contend with.
2019, we can all get a handle on. That's not that long ago. if the water did not go across Old Lincoln Highway at the bottom of 185th Street, how can you say it feeds into the drainage ditch? No water crossed, I mean, we've lived there, no water crossed Old Lincoln Highway. When you got up north towards Crescent, there was some for a very short period of time. But no, there wasn't, and I've been told by the county engineers that the water, the ditch that's unnamed, feeds into Indian Creek, and that's where our property would drain, not into Pigeon Creek, not into Lapworth.
Yeah, the majority of your property does drain east into Indian Creek. We talked about that, and I sent you the maps that
Right,
show
you
that.
did, and that map was a whole lot easier to read when we got the original packet. Thank you.
So the water that does fall on the east side of your, the west side of your property does not flow to Indian Creek. It cannot flow.
Correct. But what I'm saying is 2019, there was no water on Old Lincoln Highway. I don't know if any of the people in the room had water on Old Lincoln Highway.
Yeah, none of us.
Okay, we did not.
Missouri Avenue took out the road on Missouri Avenue and 183 because there was a truck that fell over in Shay's yard because the road went away. Water was almost at my shop at 25300 Old Lincoln Highway.
So how far out are you?
I'm 2 miles north of Crescent, CNH.
You're north of Crescent, yeah, but I'm talking south of Crescent. So this
Okay,
is
so
that.
north or west?
Yeah.
I'm south of Crescent, and it was the first place the water came over the road in 19.
You did get some?
It, yeah, it shut the road down.
South of Crescent,
Yeah.
1.5 miles.
1.5, so you were 3 miles south. So no, it did not shut it down.
469.
Yeah, okay. It did not shut it down.
Was that one day that it rained and the ground was still froze and it melted the snow? And then like half of the morning was gone by afternoon?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. That was done 2019, I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah.
So you're doing all these classifications, what are you doing with the city of Crescent?
Well, can we wait on that until we get to the classification process?
Yep.
Okay.
I did not hear, I heard someone ask the question. So we're not really actually debating annexation, like you're saying that it's happening, correct?
I am recommending anything that sheds water down on the ditch be annexed. The board is hearing the objections and can make a different decision if they feel that it's warranted.
Which board?
The board of trustees.
Okay.
Yes.
So essentially, unless we can afford our own engineering firm to give a completely different report or to shade it, however, I mean, if they see it differently, and afford a lawyer and go through all that, because I'm sure this is all follow the letter of the law, it's basically settled, because what we have here shows that it all drains to Pigeon and we all benefit and done deal, right? I mean, the only reason you could change that is if you found a competing engineering firm to give a competing report.
You're entitled, can you hear me?
Man.
Just keep it up close to your face.
Is it an SM58? I asked that question. I sang for 25 years and always over the SM58. Doesn't really, let me address what you were talking about. This is this engineer's opinion, and he has quite a bit of experience. You are welcome as a landowner to hire your own engineer and do your own work. This is what the trustees have decided to do, to hire Bolton and Mink to do it.
No, I understand that completely, but
And I have worked with them for years. John's mentor was what my father considered the best drainage engineer in the state of Iowa. So I'm used to these folks, and I don't take any opinion contrary to them. I don't do engineering work, and I don't like engineers to do legal work. But as a landowner, you're entitled to do that. If the board makes a final decision, and you have filed a written objection, you may appeal that decision within 20 days. And there's a process for doing that spelled out in the drainage code. Your appeal is to the district court in Pottawattamie County. And so you would have to have a lawyer do that for you and guide you through that and direct your appeal. And that seems harsh, but that's the process that's available in the drainage code.
right, understood. That's much more clear than.
You can't file pro se and represent yourself? Isn't this America?
It is America, the entire, from coast to coast. And I don't know whether or not the district court judge in Pottawattamie County that would be hearing the case and handling the case, I don't know if he would allow your pro se appearance and your representation of yourself. He may, and if he does, so be it. You won't have the legal expense.
Well, like you, I earned a law degree too, so.
Well, then you might be able to tackle the pro se process.
I just want to prevent my dad from losing more money. He's got a terminal illness and gets hit with this new assessment. He's lived out there for 40-some years, a bunch of retired old people dying on fixed incomes. And you present us with this paperwork and scare the whole area.
You know, part of the problem here is there hasn't been any activity for many, many years. And there should have been. And this just comes about because we have the FEMA repairs, and we've got to be able to justify that to them. And there are lands that the engineer has identified that do drain into this district facilities. And that's enough to trigger annexation. Now, we're not determining the amount. That just says that there's a material benefit. At the reclassification hearing, if you're annexed, then the amount will be determined. And if you have very little benefit, that amount will be very small. I think the minimum fee is $5. And the $5, the reason that is because that covers administrative costs that the auditor and treasurer have for sending out bills. That covers what their cost is.
Get any money out of you guys?
To mail out bills, but $5 is minuscule compared to what value this land has for you folks.
But the principle of taxation without representation is priceless.
Yeah, well, you're not going to be taxed without representation. When you're annexed into the drainage district, you have all the rights and all the law that the drainage statute provides you. It is not taxation without representation. You're going to be included
After the fact.
After the fact.
We don't get a say until we're annexed.
This is not our representation. We have no say-so apparently.
You have say-so, you're using that say-so today. At the hearing.
They already come predetermined they're gonna do it.
This board hears your objections and what your concerns are. The engineer does as well. He's already made some amendments to his report. He's probably ready to do some more changing on those if he determines, if you're able to show him that you're not benefited by the district facilities.
Something that would help a little bit is, who is this board? We don't know.
Are they here?
We don't know.
I'm not sure I can introduce them. Those three fellows there.
Go ahead, Frank.
Frank Moran, Mike Schrock, Dale Reed. And we all have to pay into the same thing you guys are complaining about, so. A lot more than you do. More than we do?
Yeah.
A lot more. Okay.
I think everybody's thinking like that, where we're gonna do like projects. We're fixing
I have a question
infrastructure.
just for clarification. So what you were saying was if every person in this room wanted to hire the same attorney, we have 20 days after the decision is made, because it sounds like the decision is going to be made, that then we could oppose it, if everyone in this room wanted to hire the same attorney, correct?
That's right, your appeal must be timely. There's a process that the attorney you hire should know how to do to perfect the appeal and to take this into district court. And the district court would review what your objections are. That's the main reason that we ask for written objections, because these objections are part of the permanent records which were maintained by the Pot County Auditor's Office. And the district court judge would review these objections.
So like Tina's objections would then be considered, or, I'm sorry, I think that was your name.
Yes.
And if I'm saying that mine drains into someone else's pond, that would be taken into consideration, correct?
Yes. And it's up to your lawyer how you strategize your case. I'm not going to set it up for you. But you should have some competent engineering advice as well, and/or anecdotal testimony about whether there is or is not usage of Pigeon Creek facilities for your water. This engineer says there is. Tina?
Yes, I don't know, if somebody from the Pottawattamie County Engineers Department here, I have an email from Shauna Hedgeguard that just came, and it says, Lapworth Creek, just east of Oak Valley subdivision, runs northwesterly parallel to Oak Valley Road, eventually departing Oak Valley Road and running parallel to Pottawattamie Lane, eventually departing Pottawattamie Lane and running west and draining into Pigeon Creek. So if you live in that area, according to the county attorney, she goes on to say, as far as the ditch by 185th Street, Old Lincoln Highway, this is just an unnamed ditch draining from the bluffs north of the intersection and running parallel to Old Lincoln Highway, eventually draining into Indian Creek at Mud Hollow on L29 on north side of Council Bluffs. So that's our county engineer. It's somewhat, for my state and some of my neighbors, it is to the advantage that we are contesting what John is saying.
Yeah, but I believe he's, or she,
It's Shauna.
I believe what she's talking about is the 90% of your property that does do that.
No, she says, as far as the ditch by 185th Street, and I couldn't find anybody that knows the name of that ditch, runs parallel to Old Lincoln Highway, that it's at the intersection and drains into Indian Creek at Mud Hollow, which most of us probably know is at the city limits, and on the north side of Council Bluffs. So Indian Creek is a huge drainage area, and the city maintains that. And I don't know if anybody from the city is here today either, but yeah. So I'm maintaining a lot of that runs into Indian Creek, not to Lapworth Creek and or to Pigeon Creek.
I'm here to talk to the exceptions, but I think some of the things that I thought about, what impacts me.
Can't hear you. Can you take my
Hold on just a second.
Let's get you on the mic or something.
I'm an owner. My family's lived at the bottom of Crescent Creek for over 100 years. Sometime in the 60s, the county turned our road into Badger, which is now a county road. When they went up through the valley, they scraped the side of the hill right next to the house to get dirt to level it out, and then they went from ridge to get the dirt to make the road, and we've got a nice little road that goes all the way up. Most of that was done in the bed of Crescent Creek, which was a slow-moving, meandering, full of vegetation, natural vegetation all the way down. There was never a flooding problem. Once they put that road in, they turned Crescent Creek into a gutter so that it runs along the side of Crescent Creek. There's a ditch that has formed that is straight as straight can be. There used to be old wooden bridges covered that were in two locations going up that road. One was where the creek went from the north side of the road to the south side of the road. The other one is right at Jefferson, where Little Crescent Creek came down into Crescent Creek. So there are two culverts that are now in there. If you've got a long tube that you're pushing running water through, that's called a venturi. So what you have from the top of Crescent Creek coming almost in a straight line all the way down to Crescent is a load of dirt, silt. When you have a heavy rainfall, if you were to take a cup of that water that's coming out of that creek, it's the consistency of 1 tablespoon of Hershey's cocoa with 1 tablespoon of water. There is no doubt in my mind where the dirt is coming from that is plugging the drainage in Indian Creek. And I'll bet you it is the major source of silt that's coming down. Not out of Pigeon, not out of anywhere else. When you talk to people about the drainage, they They will not let a farmer do anything about it. So what's happening is, and Frank Moran, you know this as well as anybody, because you farm that patch of land, is that there is a ditch that is eating away into the field. So not only are they wanting farmers through their property taxes to pay for remediation, they're stealing precious farmland all the way down. This thing's upside down and backwards, what they're trying to do.
In other words, what you're saying is the farmers are not putting in waterways, and it's just washing the dirt right out of the field.
There, between it runs right past my land, and my cousin, who owns the other part, she has most of it coming out of her land. And there is a ditch 20 feet deep and 20 feet wide, the whole length, and it's getting wider every year. The culvert empties into comes under the bridge, comes right down my driveway, makes a right angle. It is undercutting my driveway. It is undercutting the whole length of that area. It is already full of dirt. It isn't just dirt, but I'll bet you half the dirt that's plugging up those things came off of my cousin's field. And the other thing is, if you go all the way up Crescent, you just look down, you can see it. Nothing's hidden. In the 50s, or late 50s, when they put that road in, there was a farmer by the name of Burrish. And when they moved that creek, he had a dairy operation. He could no longer get his cows across that street. So on his home, he put in a culvert. He covered the culvert, and he made a road. They tried to make it out because they called it a dam. I don't know if you've noticed, but the dam is a really nasty word to use. And it is used to control water. But also, if that dam breaks, it's dangerous. And people get killed. And to me, that damming and stepping is not being used to control the water in all locations. That is what needs to be done. And I don't think we should be paying for it. Now, it sounds like we have no voice in this. That if we don't like what they want to do with our tax money, then we better hire a lawyer. It's occurred to me, we got another option. There's a guy in Des Moines that is called the state auditor. And the state auditor's job is to look for abuse of people misspending taxpayer money. So not only are they demanding that they're going to do this to us, the other thing that they're going to do is they're going to make us pay for it. And I think that's an abuse, and I think if we all wrote letters to put out a petition and get the wording right and put it in there, maybe we can get some help in fighting what is being crammed down our throats. The other problem is it doesn't make sense that we have local knowledge. We have been living on this land, and we have local knowledge, and what we see that they want to do, it isn't right. I don't care what the numbers are or how they're doing the calculation, it's not correct.
Okay, well, my question is, what happens if the trustees make a decision today to not approve the annexation? Is this whole thing dead? What are the next steps?
The question from the back of the room was, what happens if the trustees decide not to annex? What's the next step? Well, the next step would be to review it again, if it's brought up again. Any one of the landowners in the district may file a petition. The petition triggers activity with the Board of Trustees. they need to bring it up and answer it. I had a couple quick comments, and then we'll go over to some hands up over here. One is, and I don't know if it helps clarify, is when drainage districts annex land into the district, when it's agricultural or rural land outside of an urban area, they annex by 40-acre parcels. Now, it may only be that there are 1, 2, or 3 acres that are benefited in the 40 acres. So the annexation occurs on 40 acres, but then the amount of an assessment is determined at the next step, which is reclassification. There you determine the amount of the value. All drainage assessments are based upon relative benefit. That means that every parcel of land in the drainage district, be it 40-acre tracts, or if there are acreages or smaller tracts, which might be in the town of Crescent, each individual tract is given an assessment, and it's based on the relative benefit. The drainage code doesn't give us 32 bullet points to check. It just says the classification commission, which is the engineer and 2 disinterested landowners, make a report, and that commission determines the parcel with the highest need for drainage, and that's given a factor of 100, and they determine the parcel with the lowest need for drainage, which is given a factor of 1. So once the reclass occurs, those are the standards that they use. Another thing I wanted to mention, and because I don't know if I'm helping with annexation, is that when drainage districts were initially formed, most of them occurred in the 1920s. There was a very large push to feed the world during World War I, and there was a lot of activities in drainage districts. The reason they were formed is, and this is a hypothetical situation, land that was up on the higher ground usually grazed and didn't do row cropping, and the water came down the hill, but it all gathered on the lower ground in the valleys. So the people in the valley wanted to form drainage districts. They did so, but they didn't include the people on the higher ground on purpose, because there's a rule in starting up a new drainage district that is called a remonstrance, and that means that if more than 50% of the landowners by population who also own more than 70% of the land object, you can't form a new drainage district. So we have over 3,000 drainage districts in the state of Iowa. Almost every single one was started much smaller than it should have been to avoid a remonstrance, because the people down in the valley really needed drainage assistance. The state of Iowa receives 10% more water every year through rain, snow. Probably the only 2 ways we get is the rain and snow, but we can't use that. So we have to have a system to move that water over to the Mississippi, which goes down into the Gulf of Mexico. And if we didn't have our artificial drainage, a bunch of our land would not be productive or usable. That's a bit of a bunny trail for you, but it gives you a little bit more of a background. Most of you folks have not been involved in drainage before. And this table here had a couple of hands up for a while.
I'm just trying to understand the reason for the annexation. I'm a property owner, obviously. The reason for the annexation is currently to try to draw funds for some flood damage that had occurred over previous years to some extent that weren't paid for by other upstream groups. Is that correct? I mean, so what you're really looking to do is fund something that some of this was caused by someone else, and my guess is that you're going to use some of this Pigeon Creek drainage annexation to pay for other areas' problems? This isn't just for us, this isn't part of the landowner's benefit, there's a money problem, this is what you're looking for?
So it's to set a net, pay for the repairs made after 2019. But all the repairs are down here in this area. So there's a repair at the interstate that was caused by erosion from Pigeon Creek. There was a repair done in the corner here, Lone Trail Road and the Union Pacific line. That corner had to be repaired there. And then another section of the ditch in section 23 had to be repaired. So those are the repairs that are being paid for. We're not talking about other additional repairs in the future. There's no intent or plan to do anything major unless something shows up. So the ditch at the moment is in relatively good repairs. Actually, probably the best it's been in 25, 30 years at this point. So there's no plan to do additional work. And as I said before, FEMA paid a very large portion of that cost. So this is the remaining.
How much did FEMA pay for it?
About $250,000 worth so far. There's some additional things that are kind of hanging out that we haven't gotten fully completed yet. They're still working through their process. So we're expecting about, I have to my sheet. Hold on a second.
And what is the current amount they're looking to recoup?
So the dollars we are looking for at the moment, we'll get into this more in the reclass, it's $240,000 remaining on the main open ditch, so 2.4 times what you're seeing in your schedules. Lapworth, we're looking at 25% of what your assessments are shown. Crescent, we're looking at 82% of what is shown in your schedule. 63 for branch 1 and 78% for branch 2, or branch 1A. FEMA dollars paid to date is $206,000, total FEMA dollars obligated, $206,000. State has paid $25,650 with a total cost share of $232,000.
Excuse me, I got a letter in 2019 for a meeting, and then I got another letter for another date. To my knowledge, this never happened, this meeting.
Is that the?
That's my letter I got, basically the same thing as this new one. January 4th, when it was rescheduled for the 18th. It never happened, correct? It's the same information what we're getting here 5 years later. And on there it says 133 to repair levies. So who paid for that in 2019? Who paid for that repair? Are you saying FEMA paid for that?
Yeah, so the FEMA portion was for those two northern spots, and the 33,000 would have been the southern location, the spot by the interstate. So it was 133,000. That is the notice for repairs that went out for So 133,000 would have been to repair by the interstate, repair by Union Pacific Railroad, and this bank slough up here. So the bank failure north of Crescent plus the curb repair is about $100,000 of that 133, and then the additional. Excuse me, the repair at the interstate ended up being $47,000. The bank slide north of Crescent Creek ended up being an additional $17,000 because that deep ditch, the bank did not fully hold. So we had to go back in and put in telephone poles to help stabilize that thing.
So you're saying that FEMA paid for some of that?
FEMA,
And tax dollars went into that?
FEMA is helping pay for this $117,000 here, this $47,000, that was rejected by them. They initially kept it in their, they had it in their report, they were going to cost share it. They came back later and said, no, that was damage that, it may have gotten worse in 2019, but it was there before 2019. And so they said they weren't going to pay on that piece.
How come this meeting was never held, out of curiosity?
No, that meeting was held.
Okay. It was held here?
Where did we have those meetings? Right, that was at the courthouse, wasn't it, or was it here?
Which ones?
The hearings on doing the repairs.
I think it was at the courthouse.
Was that the courthouse? I think it was at the courthouse, yeah.
Could you go back to the table that showed the cost? One is for this one. 12. So, what are we gonna pay for? If everything went through, what would we pay for here? So we're talking about a total of what? And then, if I understood correctly, it's per $100,000. So, let's say, for example, the total expenses in the middle there says 22,000, right? Or for Lapworth, for example.
Yep.
And if I remember correctly, per 100,000, you had a $100,000 estimate.
Correct.
So are you saying the estimate is 22,000, not 100,000? So we pay about a fifth of what is on the table?
I would use that bottom number because we've included the federal cost share that we are still waiting on. And we've got a cushion in there to make sure that we're not coming back to this to do another assessment in the next 5 years.
Okay,
some of those minor repairs. So that bottom number there, for the main open ditch, I'm rounded to 240. Lapworth, I would round to 25,000, 25% of your assessment. $82,000 would be 82% of your assessment if you're in crescent lateral, or 63 or 70 feet if you're in the ditches out on the floodplain.
So how do we tell from any of these tables which of these columns were benefited?
So you would have received the schedule for each one that you're included in. If you're being annexed, you'll have an annexation schedule, and that doesn't tell you any dollars. That's just saying we're adding you to the district. Everybody would have gotten a main open ditch schedule, so everybody will share in some portion of this 240. And then beyond that, there would have been an additional packet for each of those other four facilities that we're assessing for. If you're in that facility, you would have received a packet for that.
So, for example, I think I got the Lapworth one.
Yep.
So instead of the amount that I show in that one, the right column or the second,
yeah,
it would be about 25% of that.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
John, your slideshow has a lot of information in it, and the details are hard for everybody in the room to see. Can we collect email addresses so we can email the slideshow out afterwards?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got a notebook that we'll be passing around. If you don't get to sign it, write your email down on a piece of paper and leave it up here at the front desk, and we will get this packet mailed out so you can study it in greater detail after the meeting.
John, we've had multiple conversations, and it appears that most of the group here doesn't believe that they have any benefit from being annexed. So it costs them. They've been.
Gary, we can't hear you.
The costs have to be paid no matter what, whether we're annexed or not. My question is that the trustees, I assume, have to be from the drainage district. Would that be correct? So if we aren't annexed, people who are already in the district would have to pay for it. So subsequently, do we not have a conflict of interest with our trustees to make this decision whether to annex? The question was whether or not the trustees have a conflict of interest. Trustees by law, by drainage code, and it starts at 468.500 and goes on for quite a few numbers. It spells out all of the qualifications and duties of trustees their elections, their meetings, how they conduct business. That law has been in effect for probably 100 years, and I don't believe there's any conflict whatsoever. They're required to own land within the district to be a trustee or to have an association with the land. So they have to have that, and oftentimes their land is involved in what they're making decisions about. That's not dissimilar if this were managed by the Pottawattamie County Board of Supervisors. It's very frequent that supervisors will have land in the county, and they make decisions regarding land that is in the drainage district in the county. May not always be their land, but neighbors' lands. So my very brief answer is no, there's no conflict of interest. The Iowa Code spells out who participates and how to participate.
I'm missing a piece of information here, in that if we're annexed, is this a one-time payment? Is this an annual payment? Does it escalate or decline based on the needs?
It's a very good question. The question is, if you're annexed, is it just a one-time payment, or could this happen annually? It only happens when the district incurs expenses. The only way expenses for this drainage district are paid are to assess the landowners whose names are spread upon the transfer books in the county auditor's office. And that's the reason for the annexation, to include you of those people to be assessed. Heretofore, the people outside the district haven't been. Just like you don't pay any real estate taxes in Arizona unless you own land in Arizona. I don't pay any taxes into Pottawattamie County because I reside in Pocahontas County. If I were, there would be the classic example of taxation without representation.
Okay, so, give me a second here. So what you're saying is, what we're seeing for numbers here, what you sent out to us,
right.
This is a one-time assessed tax to pay for these repairs that we're discussing now, and who makes the decision on how long and when these costs are redistributed in the future?
All of the decisions in this drainage district are made by the Board of Trustees. They're the only decision makers, and they will make those decisions based upon guidance from the engineer, maybe me, or give them legal advice if they have those questions, and they make the decisions.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is a one-time taxation?
This is a one-time taxation, or one-time assessment. When work is done in the future, at some point in the future, they would assess at that time, but there is not an annual assessment.
Okay.
Done.
And if the classification schedule is still up to date at that time, they wouldn't reclassify the district. If the classification schedule is still good, and the assessments are equitable, keeping in mind that the theory of assessments is that every landowner pays a relative share based upon your benefit, your relative benefit. If you don't benefit very much, you don't pay very much.
So if annexation goes through, are these boundaries locked at that point?
No, they can always be changed. It's not unusual when we go through and make repairs in all these drainage districts in the state to find that there are parcels, usually on the edge of the district, that are either tiling their water in, or through a stream, they're bringing water in, or through surface water, they've shaped the surface and it's coming into the district. If it does, then that is a material benefit, and we attempt to annex all of that land. It's not fair to the current landowners in Pigeon Creek to pay for any benefits that landowners outside of Pigeon Creek benefit from. It's only fair to have the additional landowners annexed, and assessed. Nobody can be assessed until you're part of the district. It's not a valid assessment against you until your land is in the district.
But as far as changing boundaries or classifications, that can only be done through these procedures again. So annexation, anybody being recommended for annexation in the future would get notice and have an annexation hearing. Reclassification is locked until the district is reclassified at some point in the future.
That's
Okay,
right.
and then my final question pertaining to this would be, for future assessments, would land use have to be reevaluated for changes in the future? If a property went from being residential to commercial, or commercial to residential, would each of that have to be taken into account for future assessments?
The short answer is yes, but there's more to it than that.
I understand, I'm just asking if that would be part of that procedure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Another thing I want to stress, and it came up in conversation with one of the board members this morning, is that you should understand that when there are drainage district facilities in existence, the trustees are required by law to make repairs. Repairs are mandatory. It is the rare time and the only time that trustees can be sued if they ignore an engineer's recommendation that repairs be made and don't do it. Then any one of the landowners in the district can sue the trustees for not doing that, and the court will force the trustees to make the repairs. And that just makes sense. They are charged with the duty. It's an absolute duty to keep all district facilities in a good state of repair. Repair means to maintain or restore district facilities to their original design capacity and their original design efficiency.
Is there any notification of these board meetings or notification of incurred expenses? I mean, we were kind of, I think everybody here was kind of blindsided.
It's because we're not a part of the district right now, so why would we get those notifications?
Well, but I mean,
Good answer. She had the answer over there.
All right. So even being considered for annexation, I would have thought we would have had a little bit of heads up rather than boom, here it is.
Yes.
Well, there's no preliminary discussions with you folks. An annexation into a drainage district probably doesn't fit what you folks think about annexation. Like you could be annexed into the city of Council Bluffs. That's a different thing. You become a part of that municipal subdivision. In drainage, you're merely annexed, so your names are shown on the transfer books, and you're assessed. That's the extent of it. You don't become a part of a new area. You're just brought in to participate in it, I guess. It's similar to annexations for urban areas, and they borrowed on the code from municipalities to write the annexation in drainage.
So we're annexed, all right? So in the future, just like a city, so if we get annexed into the city, and the city increased taxes, or they were gonna build a new building or whatever else, they would come to the people and say, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Here, we're getting annexed, right? And then all of a sudden they spend money and we don't have anything to say about it.
They don't spend any money. They don't spend any money without a public hearing, and all of you landowners will get notice of the public hearing by mail and published in is it non-corral? Published in the paper of general circulation in the county, so you get notice two ways. If they need to make a repair again, they'll send out that notice, and you will attend a hearing just like this before the board to voice whether or not you want to repair or don't want to repair. Everybody in the district can object to it, but the board still has to make the repair because it's mandatory. The law says they have to do it. But if they want to do an improvement, if they want to make a ditch deeper, steeper, wider, longer, whatever you can think of, an improvement is something which extends the life of and the capacity of the facility. If they want to add a levee, anything they want to do which is an improvement, same thing. You'll be notified of the hearing, and they'll have a public hearing. Every single decision made in drainage is made at a public hearing. There are no decisions made in private and smoke-filled rooms that the landowners in the district don't participate in or know about. So you will know fair well, I can't see you anymore. You'll know at these hearings, when the engineer explains his report and what the board talks about, if they're about to spend some money. And you will have a say in that.
The idea of that, Brian made the point, taxation without representation, okay? I get that's not what it is, but we that are proposed to be annexed, when I talked, I believe John last, he said that it's, would also be paid, this would pay for floods in 19, and there is debt from all the way back to 2011, if I have that right. I thought that's what you said, John.
No, so that's what initiated the project, was the 2011, the debt from 2011 initiated that project. We developed a schedule for the river levies that paid all of that 2011 debt. So everything you're seeing here is just from 2019 and the results
Okay,
of it.
and my point with that is we were not represented by these trustees in 2019. Anybody that's on this proposed annexation was not represented by those three men in 2019, correct? Yeah, okay. I mean, to me, that's similar to his comment about not representation. We did not have representation.
They approved the bills without any,
Which is why they're now trying to annex us, because the money's been spent, they need to replenish, they need to pay that debt back.
pay that bill, what they decided on doing.
When will we know if we could end district facility? That we gonna know
Today, if we
today?
can conclude it today, if the board makes a decision today, a final decision, that will determine us. We have quite a bit of work yet to do at this hearing before the vote should be. I wanted to make one really quick comment I brought to mind. If you folks that are computer savvy and or you go to the library and you read the drainage code, annexation is spelled out in section 468.119, 468.119, and that code section provides everything about annexation. One thing it says in there, that this question was brought up somewhere this week, is that once land is annexed, the newly annexed land, the board can go back to the founding of the drainage district and add to it all of the expenses that were in existence that piece of land should have paid. Do you remember when I told you that not all the land was included which should have in the first place? And that's why that happens. That was floated once. John and I were involved in it in Worth County up in northeast Iowa. We did an extensive annexation and we talked about it. Really talked about it. It was very explosive, as you can imagine. And we did not do it. I've been doing this for over 40 years and I have never ever seen that part of the code section used, and it is not what the trustees are contemplating in this instance.
I just want to know if I'm supposed to be scared of you, or scared of them now, or grateful to them. Because that's the only, you brought that up, I don't know why. So they haven't done
Because
this
people
before.
in this
because-
room, as I have asked about it, is why I brought it up. And I won't get another chance to talk to this room. Nobody's going to come to Pocahontas to see me. So you can be afraid or grateful for that. No, it was a question that floated around this. I'm not trying to make money trails.
Where does the funding come from to get you guys going on this? I mean, somebody, you don't work on this from, I don't even know, say 2019, we'll just assume that's where you started, I don't know. So you don't work for nothing for 5 years, you know.
I know how it's done. There are 3 different ways to finance drainage projects.
No, the funding to pay you guys to get.
I know, I'm going to answer your
Okay.
question.
Okay, thank you.
His question is, how do we get paid? Me, an attorney, the engineer? non-per hour, we publish notice. I don't know what other expenses we've had. Some material expenses, material suppliers. Anyway, all expenses are paid in the drainage district by what are called warrants, and those warrants are delivered to the providers. I receive warrants for my work. I charge, the trustees determine whether or not my charge is the right amount, and then they ask the auditor and treasurer to issue warrants. Those warrants have a stamp on it that come to me that say to me, do not try to cash this warrant. There are no funds available in this drainage district. Drainage districts don't carry pools of money in large bank accounts to cover these expenses. So I receive this warrant. On the warrant, there's a determination made by the trustees, and I think that the interest rate that's charged on those warrants, the point in time that my services are rendered, and I'm able to cash the warrant, I think your current rate has been 6%? 5 or 6, that's about what the market bears. And that can be changed for every single project. The trustees can fix that. We had a bit of a dust up, as I recall, over in Crescent over this in the fire station, but it doesn't matter. So I received this warrant. I, through the course of the years, have had kids in college, a home mortgage, a car payment, food bills, and debt. So I always wanted cash. So I sold my warrants. There's a ready market for these. They are highly desirable as investments, going 5 or 6%. So investors buy warrants and they pay me. So I cash mine in. You landowners, if you have any of your property taken to extend some boundaries of right-of-way for the district, you would be paid in a warrant because there's no money in your account. Then once these assessments are determined, there'll be a levy made and you will be sent notice to pay your assessment, almost exactly the same way as your real estate taxes. When you do pay your assessment, you will have the choice, depending upon how large your assessment is, the board will determine of not less than 10 nor more than 20 years time period to pay it on installments. Keep in mind, they'll charge you interest as well. So the sooner you pay it off, the better you are, typically. That's as short an answer as I can give on how people are paid, but everybody's paid up front. And then it isn't until the money is collected after it's been assessed that there's money available to discharge those warrants.
Does that represent the deadline on your assessment?
Correct. That is what's currently in the debt for the district.
Based on the information you provided us, how would we determine our individual burden for where that is?
Right, like today, clear cut, how could I know how much I'm gonna pay if it goes through today without me guessing based on what you sent me?
I don't think they're going to get to the reclassification today. I don't know. But once that reclassification is done, this project will be about at the end of spending money. So once they know the total amount, that will be spread upon those classification schedules, and a levy made, and an assessment. And once that occurs, you'll get that notice. Just like you do when you get your real estate tax bill. It'll be a similar, do you mail them together, Linda or Melvin?
Well, then how can I know an estimate today, what I'm gonna be facing, so I know what I'm prepared for, if this is
Do
a
you know
possibility?
do you know which laterals and
No.
schedules you're in?
No.
When we're done with this meeting, come talk to me and I can go through this.
This wasn't pre-classified, was it, John?
No.
Because it was repairs.
Yeah, basically.
I guess I do think what's frustrating is we're paying for something that happened in 2019. We were not a part of that at all. Out of the blue, 5 years later, we get huge pack of information that is really hard to understand, maps that you can't even read. There's really no explanation of why this happened, what the cost was, but yet we're expected to pay for something. And I know you've got money up there, but I'm sorry, that really doesn't mean a whole lot to me. It's like we're paying for something that happened 5 years ago, and now you want to annex us and pay for it. It's really very frustrating. And there's really no, I mean, it'd be nice to know exactly, I know you've got cost up there, but there's more than that cost that we're going to be paying for. So it's just frustrating. 5 years, we don't even get really 20 days. I know you'll say you mailed it out on the 14th. We didn't get it until March 18th. To give us time to figure everything out, because nothing makes sense in there. A lot of paperwork, nothing was clear. Several phone calls to you, to trustees. I guess I'm just voicing my frustration that we're expecting an open paycheck, really. We don't know what it's gonna, you want us to sign a check, and we don't even know what we're paying, how much, and still, even looking at that, we don't know what we're paying for. That's how I look at it. That's my frustration. I guess I'm just getting it out there, so.
I want to add to what she's saying is we weren't homeowners of the property we're in now in 2019 when that damage happened. So I can understand being assessed for future, because I'm in the area now, assuming it's annexed. And now you're asking me to pay for something that I didn't own this property I do now at the time of the damage. Is that being accounted for?
No, because the assessments are based on the property, not the property owner.
And the assessments stay with the property if they're not paid. When you buy a piece of property that has a back assessment on it, it's still collectible against the property, the same way if you bought your property and the owner didn't pay the real estate taxes on it.
That's what you go through like title insurance for, right? To make sure your title's free and clear.
Yeah, and so due diligence needs to be made when you buy property. Hear me out, don't laugh at me, please. I'm trying to help you, not hinder you. You need to do your due diligence to look to see if there is work going on in the drainage district which you buy your property.
Okay, but nobody in this room knew that anything was happening until we got this drainage.
Right.
So I don't understand how.
As a property owner in 2019, you couldn't have researched this like you're saying. She has other kinds of.
It didn't come about until later, I understand that.
Yeah, and so
that's the best you can do. You probably did that.
Well, she said you bought private records, so she did do as much as she could.
Abstractors are not required to reflect drainage facilities in the abstract. It's a bad thing. It should be. Where I live, we have 300 drainage districts in Pottawattamie County. Every single square foot of the county is in a drainage district, and every single square foot has the potential to have a drainage assessment against it. Just like every parcel would have real estate taxes. Except some are exempt, but nobody's exempt from drainage assessment. That doesn't help, I don't think. Look on your face tells me you didn't like the
Statement's been made 3 times now that Upland people have not contributed anything to the runoff situation. Let me tell you a little story. I started farming in 1954, and between now and that time I have built $500,000 worth of terraces in the purpose of runoff and erosion control. In my impression, this is a very unfair assessment to me. I farmed for 55 years. Been making farm payments for 66 years.
I'm $1 million in debt and I'm 89 years old. And I think this is a very unfair assessment. It's going to raise my tax liability to $115 a day, property tax. That's my story. You don't think terraces were worth anything?
I didn't say that.
Well, yeah, you say we've been paying our dues. What does terraces do?
Drainage assessment.
What do terraces do?
It may improve all the drainage, it may improve the erosion, but it doesn't do anything for the drainage.
Oh, yeah, it does. It keeps the water from going down there. You're missing the point.
No, I get the point.
Yeah, you get it all right.
There's some of us here that probably need to put some money in meters because we don't want to get a ticket, but when can we read our objections into the record?
That's going to happen as soon as we get done with the engineer's report.
Okay.
They're all a part of the record. And what I like to do is to read them and discuss them so the objection gets properly vetted before the board and the engineer and anybody else that can address it. Are you doing the meter roll? Oh, yeah, the meter should be clear.
Do you know if the county's recording this meeting on their...
They're recording this, correct?
Okay.
We can, John, we can post recording on our county website under auditor's drainage, and then you'll be able to find it there. And we'll talk to IT, and maybe they can put this on the front page of the county's website with a quick link to the recording.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is it too late to file an objection?
No.
No, do it now.
Okay.
I'll say it again. You may file an objection at any time before the trustees make the final decision. And then, so until they vote, you can file an objection, you can add to an existing objection, you can withdraw your objection. It's fluid. You can do whatever you want to, so it becomes a part of the record.
But the purpose of this meeting is to finalize right here, so why does the board put off, for a couple of weeks so people who now understand what's going on can file an objection?
Could they decide to do that? Now, in a couple of weeks...
I would like them to decide it rather than you.
I just said they could do that. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm telling them what the law says to do. One of the things that keeps being bantered around is whether or not they have followed drainage law and the right procedures. And I'm the guardrail that keeps them to follow it. Okay? They have the ability to continue this hearing indefinitely. And I think the notice that you were sent says that the hearing could be continued, and they can pick a new date. I would think that many of the people in this room are eager to get in the field for planting season, and these guys are, I'm sure, so they'll have to decide when to have it. You could go further down the road if you want. It's going to be up to them. But I don't decide what they do. I see John took off. Are there any more questions for the engineer? John isn't going anywhere. He'll still be here.
Your jobs.
I'm going to raise the objections, and I might paraphrase, but I'll hit the highlights, and we'll answer questions on each objection as we go, so we don't lose the focus of them.
Are you going to read them through, or can I read mine real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Make sure you say it.
Yep. My name is Brian Jack Holder. I live at 18338 Heron Lane East, Council Bluffs, and my objection letter says, to the Pigeon Creek Drainage District, Board of Trustees, Pottawattamie County, Iowa, and the Pottawattamie County Auditor. We object to this hearing as illegal according to Iowa Code Chapter 468, as the original notice of this hearing is defective for failure to list the proper location of this hearing, and further object to this hearing as the second notice of this hearing is defective for not being mailed to the affected landowners 20 days before this hearing. We object to the annexation of our property into the drainage district and all classification reclassification. We object to the assessments of our property regarding the drainage district. We object to any benefit from this annexation. We propose that this hearing be rescheduled to a date and time more convenient for all landowners, preferably a Saturday. We also propose that the future location of the hearing be in a venue large enough to accommodate all landowners affected by this annexation, possibly Abraham Lincoln High School or the Mid-America Center. Sincerely, Jack B. Holder, Brian J. Holder, Caleb J. Holder, owners of 18338 Heron Lane East, Council Bluffs, Iowa, 51503, parcel number 754306100015. Thank you.
Let me address a couple of things. We like you, Jack.
Well, thank you. It's Brian. My dad's Jack.
Brian, Jack, I just read
And I'm not an attorney. I just earned a law degree from Creighton, so.
Well, you're an attorney then.
No, I'm not. I never took the bar.
Oh, well, you're not licensed?
Nope.
You're still an attorney?
I'm a photographer. Starving artist.
I like your work.
Well, thank you.
I could do that. Anyway, okay, just stack them up, we'll go through it. The notice, which was mailed and published, had this hearing at the Board of Supervisors room.
Correct.
Same time this morning.
Correct.
Then a bunch of landowners were saying there'd be a lot more people, and the board made the decision to move the hearing here. Everybody that wanted to attend appears to have been able to attend. Same time.
That's a legal conclusion not supported by fact, so.
How many people have you seen turned away because they couldn't get in this room?
How many landowners are affected by this? And how many of those are here
They
today?
didn't care to attend, apparently.
No, they have jobs. I have a neighbor that works.
You know, this is, life comes at you. We got to schedule it for a time, and that's the one that they picked. It isn't always going to be convenient for everybody. They have to choose a time and a place to do it, and this is what they did. And they did their best to put it in a bigger room.
Now, it could have been done better in a larger place with better parking.
All right, well, that's what they did. I don't think it's illegal.
Well, we'll see in court.
You probably will be in there pro se.
I will.
Be able to stir that up as much as you possibly can. The rest of it that goes to not the procedure, but you just object to the annexation, period. Don't state a reason.
I don't have to now. I object. No. The word is no.
Well, so there's nothing that I should discuss?
No, you don't have to discuss anything with me.
You're in there.
Thank you.
Next up is from Christine and Thomas Moreau, is that what you say?
That's what I just talked about, not being there.
You object to being charged this assessment?
Can't hear you.
She objects to being charged this assessment now that you've learned that this is to cover debt from 2019. We were not landowners at the time the damage occurred. We should not be part of the debt incurred before we were in the area. If we get annexed and bills or incurred damages done while I am a homeowner in the area, it would then be appropriate at that time. Anything else to say than we said before, John? You can't add or subtract to what we said. Do you have anything else? This is from I'm sorry, I can't read this writing.
To give them the opportunity to get their complaints.
You can continue. We're gonna have to continue your public hearing. We did that.
And then we can get a venue where we can hear better and
Make a motion. Or should we stop and make?
You want to, is the board kind of in consensus now?
so that they have an opportunity to get their complaints.
It's hard to hear in here, isn't it? Hasn't there been a lot of discussion that didn't get heard?
Just keep the public hearing. We did that with the wind tower.
I know there's a lot of rumbling in the room from time to time, but I think
When the board
that
did the wind tower.
we've tried to use this microphone.
They just continued it
I apologize.
from the boardroom. And then
So the board has brought up, they may just continue the hearing now.
I'm sorry?
You're going to do it now rather than wait for the continuance?
Do what?
Make a continuation now.
Yeah, I think we should continue it.
Somebody make a motion.
What was that?
You'll need a motion and a vote to continue it to a later date.
Yes.
And I would suggest you try to arrive at that date right now, and everybody in the room, write that down.
do an evening. We did an evening.
And the place, do you know what place you want to do it?
No.
Mr. Hudson, are you going to continue to read the objections?
Yeah.
So they can get recorded?
No, not as we're going to continue the hearing. They're thinking about continuing the hearing right now.
To the next hearing?
Yeah, and then we'll go through all of them at the next hearing. Because you maybe didn't hear the first couple that I read and the response.
Place to be,
how do we pick a place now?
we can make a motion.
To be determined. You can pick a date. But do we have to pick a date right now and a place?
Well, you should, because they're not going to have another meeting to tell the landowners what the date's going to be.
But how do we know where
We
we
don't
can
know,
get?
we don't know the place if you're going to go to a different venue.
You could do another mailing if that's determined later. There's another.
I'd like to make a motion. I want to make a motion.
Wait, let's just make sure we're all
Can you
right.
do it on your website, Melvin, and people check that?
We can do that.
Crescent, Facebook, that's been blowing up a lot of this stuff.
And we could make a motion to continue the public hearing at a time and place to be determined. And notification will be on the county's website and
I see
Crescent's Facebook.
Facebook is blowing up about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and there'll be various digital notices we can make.
What they're discussing is we continue this hearing and the reclass hearing.
I don't want to do another mailer because everyone here is concerned about the costs that we're incurring. And we're all doing the best we can here to control the cost. So, I mean, we walk a double-edged sword here a little bit as to what's legal and what's not legal. We're trying to be as conservative as we can moving forward in the legal expertise and the engineering that we do.
It's legal just to continue it and tell the people here, but most people here would have access to a computer.
There's a lot of people that don't though. The elderly, the older people don't have internet, or a lot of them don't have cell phones.
How do they communicate?
They have landlines still.
They could use a landline and they could call the auditor's office and find out.
But
what
if
it
they're
is.
not here, they don't know, how will they know?
You folks could tell them.
Oh my, I gotta go knock on the door.
We have to post it in the spot. We have to post it in the spot.
They've already legally published and mailed notice. They don't need to do that again to continue this hearing. It's just like being in court. When you get served by the sheriff, you're required to go. You start the trial, the judge decides he's going to move it to another day. You have to just abide by what the judge says from the bench.
But you're in court and you hear it. The people that are not here, that do not have internet service.
Jonathan,
The people that are here chose not to come to this hearing today.
We have enough jobs, we didn't have enough notice. It got changed.
What time of day would you like it?
I'd rather have it at 6 o'clock in the afternoon or on the weekend.
How about the Crescent?
Not all, but most people.
Close for all the elderly?
The bottom line is this whole thing sucks. And the other thing is that you've got your hand through the property taxes into my bank account. And that is, you are going to go ahead and do what you think you need to do. And by annexing these people all into that district, you just put their bank accounts into direct line into yours through the property taxes. And then you say, well, if you don't like it, hire a lawyer. Great, I get to spend more money and more time trying to do something that I don't see the benefit.
We heard you once, does this have anything to do with when and where we have the next hearing? We continue hearing.
There's no side.
Several weeks. Let's get this settled.
Hey.
And I'd like to know whether or not, if we had a vote, we stopped this.
I want to make a motion here on behalf of
Serbian.
We will continue this hearing at a later date and time. What we're going to be strapped with is trying to come up with a venue, and then to try to appease all of you in controlling costs, try to figure out the most effective way to notify everyone here, because if we've all, I think John alliterated to what it costs us to do this mailer. Mailing, and we're just trying to figure out the most effective way to notify everyone, whether it be putting up a notice somewhere.
You got a notice right when you come into Crescent. You got a school that's sitting empty, there's your venue. Congratulations, everyone can park for free and go in. It's accessible. You have a gym.
Fellas,
I second that motion.
fellas, keeping in consideration a lot of the missing work to be here, a weekend, if possible, would be preferred.
Question. My understanding was that these letters, these objections did not have to be read out loud. They'd just be part of the record as long as we got them into you. Because it seems like we're going to be here forever if you're going to have to read every one of them out loud.
This isn't the most I've ever had, I've read a lot of them before. But I would think that the landowners would want their objections to be heard by everybody in the room. If you don't want your objection read, I won't. I'm not going to read any more today. We're going to have a hearing continued, it looks like.
We're going to vote on it.
And we'll start over.
Aye.
But the trustees are over there saying it's all in favor, aye, but that's an example of, we don't have any control of what the trustees do.
You don't get the vote of the trustees.
I know, that's why you say that you're assessing me for they're assessing me, no.
What would you like?
I would like to be represented in this annexation, and somebody can be.
Well, you've spoken 5 or 6 times.
I know I have, and I can speak to something you told me.
We got everybody can get their complaint. Agreed. Yeah.
So the motion's been made, the motion's been carried. The motion's been made, the motion's been carried that there will be a continuation of this hearing, at which time we're trying to figure out a way to notify you all as to a time and a venue. It's been noted that Saturday evenings are better. We don't know because a lot of that's going to have to do with the venue that we would choose, the availability of our council and whatnot. So at this time, it's best to just say that it's a continuation of this hearing.
Good job. Meeting's adjourned.